Nobody expects a dead woman to leave voicemails. But that's exactly what happened to Derek Calloway when he drove back to Harlan County, Kentucky, to pack up his mother's things. She had been dead for 3 days, and she had been calling every single night. Derek hadn't been back to Harlan County in 6 years. 6 years of distance, of excuses, of telling himself he'd visit next summer, next holiday, next time. And now there was no next time. His mother, Ruth Calloway, was found at the bottom of her basement stairs on a Tuesday morning by the mail carrier, who noticed the newspapers had been piling up on the front porch for 4 days straight. The coroner ruled it an accident, a fall. Simple, tragic, final. Derek flew in from Chicago, signed the paperwork, shook the hands of people he barely recognized, and then drove out to the farmhouse alone. The drive out to the property took him down a long gravel road, winding through dense Appalachian forest, fog sitting low between the trees like it had no intention of leaving. The farmhouse sat at the end of that road, dark and quiet, the way old houses get when nobody has been tending to them. Derek parked and sat in his car for a moment, just looking at the place. The porch light was still on. His mother always left it on. He didn't know who had turned it on this time. He told himself it was probably just a timer. He grabbed his bag and went inside. The house still smelled like her. Cornbread and pine cleaner. That specific combination that Derek hadn't smelled in 6 years but recognized instantly. The way certain smells just live inside you forever. Her reading glasses were folded on the kitchen table. Her coffee mug had a ring stain on the counter beside the sink. Her cardigan was draped over the back of the chair like she'd just taken it off before stepping out to the garden. It didn't feel like a dead woman's house. It felt like she had just stepped out for a few minutes and would be back any second. Derek stood in the kitchen doorway and breathed through that feeling until it passed. Then he got to work. He started with the kitchen because it felt the safest. He pulled out cardboard boxes and began wrapping her dishes in newspaper, stacking her old cast iron pots, sorting through the junk drawer full of rubber bands and expired coupons and birthday candles that had never been used. It was ordinary work, grief work, the kind of thing that keeps your hands busy so your mind doesn't have to go anywhere dangerous. He was halfway through the second cabinet when he noticed the answering machine on the counter beside the telephone. The little red light was blinking. 17 new messages. Derek figured it was neighbors, church ladies, people from town who had heard about Ruth through the funeral announcement in the local paper. He dried his hands on a dish towel and pressed play. The machine beeped, and then came the voice, low and warm and completely, unmistakably familiar. His mother's voice, saying his name. "Derek, honey, it's Mama. Just calling to check in. Call me back when you get a chance." Derek stood very still. He looked at the timestamp on the machine. The message had been left the morning after she died. She had been dead for 14 hours when that recording was made. He stood there for a long moment, just staring at the machine. He told himself it was a glitch, old technology. The phone company sometimes held messages in the system for days before delivering them. That had to be it. She probably left this message days before she died and it just came through late. That made sense. That was a reasonable explanation. He pressed play on the second message. "Derek, it's Mama again. I don't understand why you're not picking up. I've been trying to reach you." The timestamp on the second message was 2 hours after the first, both dated after her death. His finger hovered over the button. He pressed play on the third message. His mother's voice again, but something about it was different this time. Not the words themselves. The words were simple enough, but the tone was off, slower, like she was choosing each word carefully, like she was trying very hard to sound normal. "Derek, something's wrong with the basement. Don't go in the basement." And then the message ended. Derek realized he had been holding his breath. He let it out slowly. He looked down the hallway toward the basement door. It was closed. He looked back at the machine. 14 more messages. He called Mrs. Prater, the neighbor who lived 2 miles down the road. She was in her 70s, had known Ruth for 40 years, and picked up on the second ring. Derek asked her if she knew anything about the calls. There was a pause on the line before Mrs. Prater spoke. She said she had heard the answering machine picking up through the shared farmhouse wall on several nights. She had assumed Derek had already arrived and was just not answering. She said the calls had been coming in every night, sometimes 2 or 3 in a row, always between 2 and 4 in the morning. She had thought it was odd but hadn't wanted to pry. Derek thanked her and hung up. He stood in the kitchen in complete silence. He listened to all 17 messages in order. The first few were unsettling but recognizable. Her voice, her rhythm, her way of ending sentences with, "Okay, honey," the way she always had. But somewhere around message 9, things shifted. The voice got slower, deeper, like it was being played at the wrong speed. The words started losing their edges. By message 13, she had stopped using full sentences, just fragments, single words. His name, repeated. Derek, 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 like she was calling him from somewhere far away and wasn't sure he could hear her. Message 14 was just breathing. Long, slow, steady breathing that went on for the full 60-second recording limit and then cut off. Message 15 was the same. Message 16 started with silence, almost half a minute of it. And then at the 43-second mark came the sound. 3 taps, soft but deliberate. A pause. Then 3 more. Then 3 more after that. Rhythmic, patient, like someone with nowhere else to be. Derek recognized the sound. He had been hearing it since he arrived. He had told himself it was the pipes. Message 17 had been left at 2:14 that morning, just hours before Derek pulled into the driveway. He pressed play and heard silence at first. And then his mother's voice came back. Calm, clear, completely normal, like the previous 16 messages had never happened. "I'm so glad you're finally home, baby. I've been waiting. Come see me." Derek set the phone down on the counter very carefully. He stood in the kitchen and went completely still. From somewhere below the floorboards, faint but unmistakable, came 3 soft taps, then 3 more. Derek told himself he was not going to open that basement door. He told himself that for about 4 minutes. Then he walked to the door at the end of the hallway, put his hand on the knob, and stood there. The tapping had stopped. The house was completely quiet. He could hear his own heartbeat. He could hear the wind moving through the trees outside. He turned the knob and pulled the door open. The smell came first. Not rot. Not anything he expected. Cornbread and pine cleaner. The same smell as the rest of the house, except stronger down here. Like it was concentrated. Like it was the source. He turned on his flashlight and took the stairs one at a time. The basement was unfinished. Concrete floor. Exposed beams overhead. The old water heater in the far corner rumbling softly. Derek swept his flashlight around the room. Nothing seemed out of place. Old storage boxes, a broken chest freezer, his mother's gardening tools hanging on a pegboard. And then the light landed on something in the far corner that stopped him completely. His mother's rocking chair. The one that had always sat on the front porch. Nobody had moved it down here. As far as Derek knew, it was facing away from him, toward the corner wall. And it was moving. Just barely. Just slightly. The slow, easy rock of a chair that someone had just stood up from. Derek crossed the basement floor slowly, his footsteps loud on the concrete. He walked around the side of the rocking chair until he could see the seat. There was a folded piece of paper sitting on it, his name written on the outside in his mother's handwriting. He picked it up with shaking hands and opened it. 2 sentences. That was all. Written in the same neat cursive she had used his whole life. They said I fell. I didn't fall. Check what's behind the water heater. Derek looked up. He turned toward the water heater in the corner. He walked over to it slowly and shone his flashlight into the narrow gap behind it. The wall behind the water heater was covered in scratches, not random marks. Words. The same phrase carved into the concrete over and over, covering every inch of visible wall space. Some of them so deep they must have taken real effort, real time, scratched with something small and hard, scratched by someone who had been down here long enough to fill an entire wall. The same 5 words, hundreds of times, in every direction, overlapping each other, layered on top of each other like whoever wrote them needed Derek to see it and never stopped seeing it. He raised his flashlight higher and read it. He was already in the house. Derek spun around. The basement door at the top of the stairs clicked shut. He heard the latch catch. He heard the silence that followed, which was somehow worse than any sound. The rocking chair had stopped moving. The smell of cornbread and pine cleaner was overwhelming now, thick enough to taste. Derek stood at the bottom of the stairs and looked up at the closed door and understood, all at once, what the messages had really been. Not a hunting, not a glitch. Someone had been in this house between the day his mother died and the day he arrived. Someone who knew her voice. Someone who had her recordings. Or something worse than recordings. Someone who had been here the whole time, waiting, calling him in. The voicemails weren't a message from the dead. They were an invitation from the living. And Derek had driven 6 hours to accept it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. No service. No Wi-Fi. He had checked when he arrived. He pulled it out with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking and looked at the screen. 1 bar. Just enough. The phone was ringing. Incoming call. He read the name on the caller ID slowly. The way you read something when part of your brain is still hoping your eyes are wrong. Mom with a small red heart beside it. The contact he had never had the heart to delete. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Derek stood at the bottom of the stairs in the dark and listened to it ring. And from somewhere above him, from somewhere inside the house he had just come from, he heard another sound. Soft, patient, familiar. The creak of the floorboards. Someone was walking toward the basement door, and they were taking their time.